What's up guys, Causeway Giant here, and oh boy, we are really in full swing with this year's movies now. Logan, Guardians 2, and now Alien Covenant. And obviously this film was one of the ones I was most hyped for this year, because Alien is one of my favourite film franchises of all time. With the horror fest of Alien, and the epic action of Aliens, and the mediocrity of Alien 3, and the well, whatever this monstrosity is. I'm not just talking about the newborn, I'm talking about the whole film in general. Okay, yeah, so there have been a lot of Alien films, and unfortunately, in my opinion, more bad ones than good ones. But with prestige director Ridley Scott back at the helm and assuring that this film will actually be a horror film, unlike its predecessor Prometheus, I really thought that Alien was going to be back in good hands. And? Did it, I hear you say? Well, that's what we're going to be talking about today in my in-depth review of Alien Covenant. Woo! So grab your graduation certificate of the Prometheus School of Running Away from Things, because it's time for Alien. And if you've watched any of my other in-depth film reviews, you will know that, as usual, this will be a spoiler-filled review. So if you haven't seen the film, go check it out and then come back to watch the video. Don't worry, I ain't going anywhere. Just make sure you don't go on a full stomach. Anyway, let's talk Covenant. So overall, I've got to say, I did enjoy this movie. It really was, for me, everything that I thought Prometheus should have been, with more focus being put on the horror than the philosophy of the film. And boy, the horror in this film is definitely my favourite thing about Alien Covenant. It felt just like the original Alien, horror built up on by really haunting shots, like the one where we see the head of one of the crew members floating in the water, and the really unsettling shot from the trailer where a crew member is violently, uncontrollably twitching until he gets backbursted. Like in recent history, horror has just become a series of jump scares, the most cheap to make horror technique where everything goes quiet and then something inevitably jumps out to scare or kill the victim of the scene. Like, it's so predictable, as it's like the most cliche of all the horror movie cliches. And man, there are a lot of horror movie cliches. And it's not scary, it's just a loud noise that makes you jump because it's a loud noise. This is why I was so glad to hear that Ridley Scott would be directing this film, because through his work on the original Alien especially, you can really see that the guy understands horror and tries to actually scare the audience instead of just making them jump every time the film goes quiet. And just as I was sure he would, Ridley Scott really conveyed this in Covenant, and I am so glad, because this is what I wanted most from this film. And it felt more like you were watching an Alien film as opposed to a sequel to Prometheus. But this isn't just because of the horror. There were some nice little callbacks to the original Alien. Like the way the title appears on screen is exactly like the way the original Alien did, with the soundtrack during the title sequence and at various other parts of the film being very reminiscent of the original soundtrack composed by the late Jerry Goldsmith, which was really nice to see, or hear. And by far my favourite part of the film is the section of time between when they land on LV-223 and when David shows up, who we'll get to later on. The beautiful wide panning establishing shots of the natural landscape of the planet were a really nice refreshing change to have in an Alien film, as prior to this we've really only just seen spaceship interiors in the barren wastelands of the planets. So I thought it was really nice to have a more naturalistic setting to this film, as it creates absolutely incredible long shots and also just shows how much LV-223 has changed since Prometheus thanks to David. But man, when that guy ingests those spores, woohoo, that's when it really starts to kick off. And yes, it is pretty cliche and predictable, and you wonder how he couldn't see them when he was literally staring right at them, but oh, that backburster scene, wow. Really strong performances from all the actors convey the sheer peril of the scene, as they are terrified by what's going on. Though the way that one of the characters locks the other one in the room with the horrifying spazzing out man, which is clearly dangerous, was just confusing to me. Like, I kind of bought it initially because they were both really freaking out, and I had thought that she had locked her in because she didn't want to risk the infestation spreading across the ship, and that 2 lives lost are better than the whole crew. Like, I was fine with that. But then she comes back in just as the backburster has mauled the other girl to death, so there's no longer even any reason to go in and save her, because she's dead. Oh yeah, some of the flaws with this film are the many plot holes and unexplained faults of logic in the characters, but more on that later. Another problem I have during this sequence is the CG on the backburster. Now normally I'm not one to complain on CG, and for the most part the visuals in this film are first class, with the practical suit of the xenomorph being as realistic as you can get. But there are a few moments during the backburster scene where the CG is quite distracting due to the high key lighting of the scene, but one particular shot really stuck out like a sore thumb for me. The POV shot where the backburster leaps right up close to the camera. It just didn't look finished. See, CG is a great tool on filmmaking, and when used in the background it can produce some really convincing shots. But when something is that close to the camera, you have to use practical effects, because CGI just doesn't have the same naturalistic level of detail that practical effects do, and having CG things this close up to the camera really just proves this. To reinforce this point, I'll show you 2 close-up shots of animals from 2 separate films, one of which being practical effects and the other being CG.
She was always my favorite when I was a kid. Now I see she's the most beautiful thing I ever saw.
See what I mean? Both of these effects were created at similar times, yet the Triceratops from Jurassic Park still holds up today because it's an actual thing. Yet the computer-generated Ronto from the special edition of A New Hope doesn't, because the technology is now outdated. I just want to quickly apologise to everyone for bringing the special editions into this review. Please don't hate me. I know I've kind of been ranting a bit here, but what I'm saying is that CG is a great tool to be used in the background because it can create really convincing creatures that can perform naturalistic movements that animatronic puppets simply cannot. But ECUs like the one from Covenant I just mentioned should always be practical effects. Aside from this, I thought the actual Neomorph itself was awesome. See, yes, it was also CG, but it worked because the closest it ever was to the camera was in medium shots, and all of its scenes were shot in very low-key lighting, completely obscuring it, and thus masking the lack of precise details that it would have due to it not being an animatronic. And that is CG done well. But anyway, enough about the CG. The Neomorph itself was an insanely cool creature. The whole sequence where it absolutely massacres those people on the grass outside the ship was just non-stop thrills. I mean, it completely tears out a guy's throat with one quick slash of its tail. It was insane! And the design felt so real, like the plain white without all the tubes and stuff of the Xenomorphs made it look really naturalistic. So yeah, I think that the Neomorph is a great addition to the O-Morphs. On with the other characters in the film, and I've got to say, I thought everyone gave really great performances. Of course, there were a few underdeveloped characters who were essentially just prey for the aliens, and then there was James Franco. Well, not really. I mean, he died in like less than 10 minutes into the film. Well, that's the easiest money James Franco's ever made. But due to the fact that the crew of the Covenant were all couples. Yeah, they're couples apparently. But due to the fact that the crew of the Covenant were all couples in order to colonize Origai 6, all of their deaths felt so much more meaningful to the audience as it deeply impacted their significant others. Which I thought was a really clever idea to help the audience connect with the crew. But man, I thought Danny McBride's performance as Tennessee was one of the best in the whole film, which was kind of surprising. Like, I thought he was going to die really early on, and then the finale would consist of James Franco's character and Daniels facing off against David. But this proved to be the complete opposite, so yeah. Speaking of Daniels, I thought she was a really great character. I kind of felt like the audience were speaking through her, like when she disagrees with the crew as they all just randomly decide to go to a completely unresearched and potentially extremely dangerous planet instead of one proven to be perfect for human life just because they don't want to return to the pods. Like, come on, why isn't she captain? And this made her more relatable to the audience as it really makes you feel that you're experiencing these events through her. But for me, the characters that stole the show for me were Walter and David, both played by Michael Fassbender and both synthetics, but both very different characters. And you can really see that Michael Fassbender is outlining this in his performances, with Walter having an American accent and being very loyal and selfless, whilst David has a British accent and is now very emotional and selfish. And these differences were perfectly represented during one of my favourite scenes from the film, where David teaches Walter the flute. There is so much going on behind the scenes during this, as the way that he shows Walter how to play it by pressing down his fingers represents how David is trying to control exactly what Walter does, and trying to manipulate him into joining him in abandoning his crew. The fact that Walter isn't able to play the flute due to his programming, yet David can, shows how David is more human-like and how Walter is more machine, with the two very different personalities resulting in the conflict between the two of them of love versus duty. I thought both characters were very engaging despite being non-human, and David's dramatic change from Prometheus, like the fact that his arc has gone from being a creation at the start of the film to a creator at the end, makes him such an interesting character. And boy, that twist at the end where it is revealed that it was David who made it back to the ship and not Walter was a really nice touch. Even though it doesn't really make any sense how David was able to overpower Walter, despite the fact that Walter himself even told him that he was a more upgraded version of David's model, and the fact that he was able to perfectly replicate Walter's missing hand and facial scar in the 2 minutes it took for Daniels and co to run out of the building and for David to appear, I still thought it created a really interesting cliffhanger at the end of the film. Overall guys, I really loved Alien Covenant. I thought it was a great way to connect Alien and Prometheus and a breath of fresh air into the horror genre, which is what I think Alien primarily is, a horror franchise and then a sci-fi franchise, which is mainly why Prometheus didn't really feel like an Alien movie to me. The landscapes were beautiful and a nice refreshing change to the spacey sets of the other films. New Zealand for the win. I thought the Neomorph was a really cool new design, and I loved the whole sequence from when it initially burst out of that guy's back to when it was slaughtering the people in the reeds. The performances were all great, Danny McBride and Michael Fassbender especially. I wonder if he got double pay for playing two characters. But there were also a few flaws. As I said before, the CG on the backburster stuck out really badly, and there are quite a few plot holes holes and things that characters do that don't really make any sense, as well as a few horror cliches, and I also thought that the actual blend between Alien and Prometheus was pretty poorly executed. Like, from when they leave the planet and then get back on the ship, it feels like a completely different film, with the single xenomorph running around the ship feeling so like Alien that it kind of messed up the tone. But flaws aside, I really enjoyed this film, so I'm going to give Alien Covenant an 8.8 out of 10. Guys, let me know what you thought of the film in the comment section down below, and stay tuned for more in-depth film reviews coming out over this year. But anyway, as always, remember, if you like, then please hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you later. Causeway Giant out.